All right, good morning, everybody. Looks like we still have a few folks coming in. Um, we'll wait one more minute here and then we'll go ahead and get started. Thanks for coming today. My name is John Miller. I'm with the Colorado Department of Agriculture, and today I'm going to be talking about the enrollment process for our new STAR Plus participants and how the conservation districts and eligible entities will go about getting their producers enrolled in the program. We do have go ahead and if you feel like having questions or if you have any questions, feel like putting them in the chat box or save them to the end, and then we'll try to address them at the end of the talk, unless you have something that we have to do right up front. But if we can, we'll address those near the end. So feel free to go ahead and put them in as you see them come up, though. So anyway, thanks for coming today, everybody. The point of the meeting today, our objectives are to understand producer eligibility, discuss the roles and responsibilities of conservation districts and eligible entities, and then discuss the required paperwork to receive STAR Plus funding for producers enrolled in 2023. There's going to be a series of these webinars. We're going to keep them going throughout the summer and probably throughout the fall as well, to just keep the new participants and conservation districts and entities up to speed on what's going on and how everything's meshing together. And so this one today is obviously the June 20th enrollment package one. But we would like you to mark your calendars for the upcoming ones. On July 10th, we will have the grant guidelines one. This will be a pretty big one. We'll go through in detail through our grant guidelines. And then on July 24th, we will have a STAR Partners webinar where we'll get together with the folks that are making this program happen with us, and they can explain their different portions of the program to you all. So today we're going to talk specifically about the enrollment package. We're going to go through it here in a little bit, and then you will not be receiving it today. It'll come out when you get your contract. The enrollment package will be in there, and you will also have the grant guidelines in there as well. But today we're just going to go through it so you can all begin to prepare for the enrollment process. So here's just some key points to remember before we get into the package itself. Conservation districts and entities will need to fill out an enrollment package for each of their allowed producers. That's the webinar for today. And please email cda_soil@state.co.us if you do not know your allowed number of producers. Conservation districts and entities can enroll any producer as long as they meet eligibility, which we'll see in the next slide and in the package itself. There are no more than 30% of your producers that are board members of the conservation district or entity, or the direct family of board members. And the selection process must be fair and equitable. So if you're advertising for this, you must have a fair and equitable selection process, and obviously no discrimination or things of that nature. So producer eligibility. They must be determined eligible to receive federal funds for fiscal year 2023 from their local FSA office. And they'll need to fill out the following forms. First, they'll need to establish farm records with the FSA, which the majority of producers probably have them, but they'll need to do that. And then they'll have to fill out the following 4 forms. AD 1026, which is the HEL wetlands determination form, CCC 902 farm operations report, CCC 941 average gross income, and AD 247, which is a demographics form. Now, just because they have to fill out the AGI form, they are not actually bound to the requirements of AGI like they would in EQIP, which I'll talk about that a little bit more here in a bit. They must commit to implement at least one new soil health practice on their enrolled field for 3 crop years. They must commit to complete all required forms, check-ins, soil testing requirements, research, etc. for 4 years, which includes our closeout year. So they will receive their incentive payments for 3 years, but we are asking them to participate for that 4th closeout year for any interviews and things of that nature. There will be a commitment signature block at the end of the enrollment package. So we're asking them to sign it and for the conservation district or entity representative to sign it. And it's sort of like a mini little agreement between the conservation district / entity and the producer. And then we would like you to remember as you go forward to suggest that they continue these new practices in year 4 and beyond. So we're really doing this program to try to increase adoption of these practices long term. Obviously, we can't control what someone's going to be doing 6 years down the line, but as you're out there talking to these producers, we'd like you to just stress to them that the point of all this is to hopefully encourage long-term adoption. So I'm a farmer or rancher, and why would I want to do all of this paperwork? And so here are the benefits of Star Plus. You'll receive 3 years of technical support, a star field sign with your star rating on there, field days and peer learning, so folks can continue on their soil health journey. You'll receive incentive payments, so they're going to get a payment for 3 years in a row. They get soil testing and soil moisture monitoring systems on their fields, which they'll have access to the data from all of that. They'll have there'll be equipment grants, so we'll be getting money in that, or there'll be each conservation district and entity will get the equipment grant money, which hopefully they can structure in such a way that their star folks are using that equipment. And then finally the main one, I think, is our market premiums for ecosystem services and climate programs. So, a long-term goal of this program and a very major goal of this program is to develop market signals here, so folks can get a premium for products that they're growing with healthy soil practices, and eventually consumers will recognize those signs and be willing to pay that extra, knowing that the food that they are purchasing was grown with soil health practices in mind. So now I'm going to stop presenting real quick and jump to the enrollment package. So for those of you who have been through the Star Plus program in the last year here, you're going to see a lot of changes in the enrollment package. This is federal money that is paid for by the USDA through a grant to us. So there are some new hoops that are going to have to be jumped through, and it's going to be a bit more stringent than before. But we still think we can roll it out very quickly and get those incentive payments to folks. And so many parts of it are going to look the same, but some parts of it are going to look a bit different. And this document has some major changes in it compared to the original one from 2022. So right off the bat here, we're going to be looking at the name of the producer and the name of their farm and ranch, and then their producer ID number. So that's probably change number 1. This will be a number that's provided to you by the CDA. So we're going to give you that a list of numbers, and you're going to assign one to each of your producers as you go out and meet with them. So we'll give you the numbers. You'll fill in a number for each of your producers. So we have a unique user ID that is associated with each producer. Then we'll need their FSA registered legal name or entity name. So this is a really key part here. When they go in to do their FSA registration, which I'll talk about further down in the document, let's say their name is John Smith and it's Smith Ranch, but their legal entity name is Jonathan W. Smith, and that's the name that they've registered with the FSA. That's the name we want to see right here in the FSA registered legal name. This is going to make it so we can find your producer in the FSA system, and it is key that it is correct here. You'll also need their farm and tract number. So when they go in to register with the FSA and get those farm records on file, they will receive a farm and tract number. Many of them probably already have these. So the farm number is the identifier for their entire farm, and then the track number is their identifier for the field where these practices will be implemented. Then we have the conservation district or entity name, the date that you're doing this enrollment with them, the date that you're meeting with them and doing this, and asking them these questions. And then we have the conservation district contact information and contact number. So put your primary person who we at the CDA would contact to discuss this producer if we need to. Here you'll see the enrollment checklist. So number one at the very top is to verify that the producer is eligible to receive federal funds through an FSA office. They will need to establish farm records with the FSA and then complete the following forms for fiscal year 2023. That's the AD 1026, which is the HEL wetland determination, the AD 2047, which is the consumer data worksheet, the CCC 902, which is the farm operations report, and the CCC 941 average gross income form. So these are all typical NRCS forms, or forms that would be required for an NRCS project rather. So if a person's went through EQIP, they have most likely filled these out. Even if they did that in 2022, they will still need to go back and update those documents. They need to be current for 2023. And I can't stress that enough. They must be done in fiscal year 2023. And then there's a note here, even though we are asking them to fill out the average gross income, they are not bound by the payment limitations and the adjusted gross income limitations that are in place for other NRCS programs. So if folks are not eligible to get NRCS funds because they have too high of an income, or they have reached their payment limitation under the Farm Bill, that they are exempt from that requirement, but we are still asking them to fill out that document. Onward. So we're going to ensure that the field enrolled in STAR Plus is not receiving funds from another climate smart commodities grant. Again, this is very key. We need to make sure that they're not participating in one of the other many grants that are out there from climate smart commodities that are there's quite a few of them that'll be active in Colorado. I believe there's around 15 last I'd heard. So we need to make sure that the field is not being covered by two different climate smart grants at once. Also worth noting at this time, if they can have NRCS projects on this field, but those projects can't be, they can't be paying for the same practices that we will be paying for. So no double dipping from EQIP to pay for, say, a cover crop, and then having us also pay for that same cover crop. Now, if they have like an infrastructure, an infrastructure contract with the NRCS on the field, then we can go ahead and have them put in the cover crop for our portion, as long as it's not the same practice being paid by two federal funds. We're also going to want you to create a location map of the enrolled field, and I'll get into that here down as I get a little further down. Review the 2023 producer match form with them, and we'll go over the 2023 producer match form on another one of these webinars. Provide local guidance and technical assistance. So you're going to be out there meeting with them and talking to them and asking them what their resource concerns are, and asking them and kind of trying to help them brainstorm some of these folks. Some might know what they want to do right away, but some might need you to help brainstorm as to how they can implement practices to get those resource concerns taken care of. And then the final check here is to complete this enrollment form. Instructions wise, the purpose of this form is to structure a conversation around soil health that results in the identification of a field to try out a new practice or practices, as well as which practice or practices will be implemented. This is also an opportunity to collect information about farm and ranch operations, what has worked for soil health, constraints and barriers, and what assistance is needed going forward. This form is meant to assist with the planning and implementation of practice or practices, and to be used in conjunction with the STAR field form, which evaluates a field's progress in addressing the resource concern of soil health. Please answer questions in a detailed fashion. For instance, some questions should be answered in several sentences. incomplete forms will be rejected. So we're saying, we are trying to give you a lot of room here. We want you to be as detailed as possible. We want to know what folks are doing now, and we really want to know what they are planning to do under the Star Plus program with as much detail as we can get. Now on to section 1 here, location and acreage. Before beginning, please verify that this producer is willing to commit a specific field or pasture to the CDA Star Plus program for a period of 3 crop years. Producers will not be able to add acreage or change fields at a later date. So you want to make sure you go over that with them beforehand, make sure they're aware of all their responsibilities, make sure they're, that they are really committed to doing this for 3 years, and then for assisting us in that closeout year when we have conversations around what worked and what didn't work and how we can make things better, and provide them with a bunch of reports on the data we gathered on soil testing and things like that. So just make sure they're fully jumping in with both feet. So number 1, please attach a detailed map of the enrolled field to this consultation form that includes a polygon denoting the field boundary and also contains a clearly marked road or landmark to allow CDA staff to locate this specific field. So I can't say that enough. We want to know exactly where the field is. We don't want to be trying to guess which field it is. You should be able to do this on Google Earth or ArcGIS, but we do need a map of the field with a polygon drawn around it. Number 2, please provide coordinates to aid in the location of this field where the new practice will be implemented, not the producer's home base, but the actual field. And again, our format we're asking is degrees and decimal minutes. You should be able to go again to Google Earth and hover right over that field, and it'll give you a latitude and longitude that you can put into these boxes. What is the acreage of the field being enrolled? So we're asking how large is the specific enrolled field? How many acres of land does this producer manage in total? So we're asking their entire operation. And then if new practices are successful on the enrolled field, will the producer implement these practices on other fields? Please explain. Again, this is one where we'd like to hear in a couple sentences if possible, if this thing that they're going to propose here on the next page that they want to try, if it works out for them and is successful, will they try it in other spots? Will it be part of their fields? Will it be their entire operation? So please just let us know. Onward now here to section 2, enrolled field information. So now we're getting down to, we've picked the field, we've found the field, we've got the acreage of the field, and now we want to know what's been happening on that field. So please describe in detail the history of this field for the past 5 years. So we'd like to know any relevant management details that have occurred during that time, plant species present, crop rotations, planting dates, grazing schedules, infrastructure decisions, etc. So did they just put in a new center pivot? That'd be a good infrastructure thing to write down. When you get to the planting dates and the grazing schedules, we don't need exact days, but we would like to know times of year or months. So say the cattle come into this field in October. But we really are looking for what type of plant species are out there. We just want to get an overall idea of what they're doing on this specific field, so that later on we can look back and go, oh yeah, this is a grass hay field that has cattle grazing on it from October till January, and then it was interseeded and had an NRCS infrastructure project. So just give us an overview of what's going on here. Number 2, what is being grown on this field in 2023? So just give us the current crop. Now on to the irrigation questions. Circle if this field is irrigated or dry land. If it is irrigated, then answer these additional questions. If not, we can skip to question 4 for dry land. But if irrigated, what type of irrigation system is used? And we're providing the most common types there. And just check the ones that apply, or one that applies. What is the origin of this irrigation water? So we want to know whether it's well water or surface water. How many acre inches of water are applied in an average season? And this is something that you might be able to Ask folks in your NRCS office how to determine if the producer doesn't know. Also, you can always reach out to us at the CDA, and I'd be glad to help you to figure out how much water they're applying. There are also some pretty good rules of thumb for a lot of crops as to how much water has to be applied to even grow a successful crop. But if you have questions about this, we can, I'm glad to answer them. So feel free to reach out. So number 4, what was the most recent yield per acre for this field? So we're asking tons per acre, bushels per acre, or hundredweight. If applicable, provide the percent of moisture content for this harvest. What was the date of this harvest? And how does the production of this field compare to the overall farm or ranch operation? Number 5, specify the cumulative nitrogen applied to this field prior to the last harvest in pounds of N per acre. And then 5A here, check which amendments have been applied to this field in the last year. We give you a list there. Number 6, what resource concerns are present on this field? Erosion, pests, nutrients, moisture management, forage quality or quantity, water quality or quantity, overgrazing, bare ground. And, we're leaving this kind of open here. We want to know what the main pressing issues are that this producer is dealing with on this field that they're trying to address with their soil health journey here. Number 7, what are you doing now for soil health? What's working and what's not? So we'd like to hear what the producer is trying and what's going well for them. And number 8, if this field is covered by crop insurance, does it create complications when implementing soil health practices? So that's something we hear sometimes, and we're wondering how often that's occurring. And feel free to elaborate there as to why it creates complications. Section 3 here is the new soil health practice. So this is what the producer is going to commit to do for the Star Plus program. The first crop year will begin October 1st of 2023 and end September 30th of 2024. The producer will implement at least one new soil health practice in this first crop year, and they will continue the implementation of that practice for a total of 3 crop years. So they can do more than one. They can go for 2, 3, 4, they can do all the ones they want, but they must do at least one. It's got to be something new to that field that they haven't tried there. They have to commit to do it for a total of 3 years. They're going to get it going out there the first year, and they're going to implement it the entire time of the program through those 3 crop years. Please describe all new soil health practices that the producer would like to try on this enrolled field in detail. So number 1 here is which new soil health principle will be implemented on the enrolled field for the 3 Star Plus crop years. So select all that apply, and we give the 5 principles of soil health there: reducing or eliminating soil disturbance, increasing plant species diversity, living plants' roots in the ground longer, soil armor or residue management, or the integration of livestock. So check all that apply. And number 2, describe in detail how these soil health principles will be implemented on this enrolled field. So here's where we really want you to give us the meat of what this person's going to be doing. We want to know the real details of what their plan is for the Star Plus program. What is the new thing they're going to implement? Number 3, describe, and I will add, we're going to go over practices more when we go through the grant guidelines here on July 10th. We'll go quite a bit deeper into the practices. And what are some, we'll even have some practice scenarios we can throw out for that. Number 3, describe in detail all soil health practices that will incur costs to be submitted for this producer's Star 1-to-1 matching funds. So again, if it's cover crops, we want you to say they will be planting cover crops and will be sending in receipts for seeds, labor, mileage, that kind of thing. So we want you to be pretty specific about what we can expect to see from the producers receipt wise. It doesn't have to be 100%, but get as detailed as you can with the knowledge you have up front. Note, costs associated with chemical fertilizer, herbicide, and pesticide application cannot be claimed for matching funds. So this is another thing that is different than last year. Due to the fact that this is federal money, we will not be accepting receipts for these things. The producer can still use chemical fertilizers, herbicides, and pesticides, but they cannot submit receipts for them. Yes, Cindy, I see you have your hand raised.
Hi, John. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I was just thinking about questions 2 and 3, and we refer to soil health principles, and then we start to refer to soil health practices. And I think it makes sense to most people, but there may be some new folks that are listening in that might need a clarification between those two, if you don't mind.
You bet. So the principles of soil health are really, you know, they've been around quite a while. They are really the the general overview of how you can increase your soil health. So, and again, that's the 5 principles there: reducing tillage, increasing the types of plants that you have out there, increasing the amount of time that there's a living root in the ground. So not having large times of the year that are fallow or that are over winter when there's nothing growing there. Soil armoring or residue management being leaving more on the ground to keep erosion from occurring, and the integration of livestock is key to keeping that ground healthy, getting those animals out there, working the ground with them, and providing manure and everything out there to just keep that soil life going. So those are just the general concepts, I guess, of things that people where practices would fall would be in one of those categories. So then a specific practice, let's say for reducing or eliminating soil disturbance, would be a reduction in tillage or a movement to no-till. So the principle would be reducing soil disturbance. The practice would be, getting a no-till drill and drill seeding instead of tilling and seeding. For increasing plant species diversity, folks could look at crop rotations or cover cropping, just to get more different, more of a diversity of plant species out there on the ground. For living plant roots longer in the year, might be a cover crop in the winter or something like that, or even a summer cover crop for folks doing like winter wheat or something. So again, the practice would be planting those crops. The principle would be getting that living plant root in the ground, keeping that living plant root in the ground longer, or keeping or increasing your diversities of species out there. For soil armor or residue management, maybe people not removing their corn stubble, baling it and taking it away. Maybe they decide to leave it, so it's out there to provide some armor for that soil to hold it down. And for integration of livestock, maybe people are they have a corn or wheat field, and they want to start putting some livestock out there in the winter to graze the stubble or something like that. So again, the practice or the principle would be integrating livestock. The practice would be the act of getting the livestock out there on the ground on a field where you hadn't previously had them. And there's many different practices, which again, we have kind of a list of them, the most common ones, which we'll go over on July 10th, but many different practices to help accomplish these 5 principles. Does that help out, Cindy? I think maybe I did it.
You did a great job. Thank you very much.
You bet. Okay, so back down here, I just want to reiterate, costs associated with chemical fertilizers, herbicides, or pesticides cannot be claimed for the matching funds. So again, we're not telling people they can't put those things out there. We are just, when you send in receipts, we would not like to see receipts for those specific things in the list of receipts. Number 4 here, what barriers have prevented adoption of the proposed soil health practices before now? So why is the producer not trying it up to this point? Has it been financial, social, educational? They needed maybe that little boost of the funds we're going to provide to make maybe take the edge off on the cost for implementing this, or have they not had enough education and they're going to really be wanting to rely on technical assistance providers and knowledgeable folks around the state to help them to implement these practices? What will it take for the long-term adoption of these practices to occur? So, what was the barriers, and then what will it take for this to become a common thing for this producer? Number 5, this one's kind of, you know, very broadly what the soil health movement was getting at when it began here in Colorado to, leading up to this program. What are the long-term goals for soil health on this field? So what is this person's hopeful end outcome? All right, section 4. So this section is a required conversation. And there's no written responses required here. But we do want you to talk to these folks about it and let them know. And there will be more information about both of these things coming out. But just generally over the top here, overview, soil testing, the conservation district or eligible entity will assist the enrolled landowners with their first soil test between April 1st and July 1st of 2024. Testing will be done per CDA provided guidelines and should be done after the ground has thawed and prior to any planting activity. So we'll get you out some guidelines and let you know where to send those samples to be tested. And then soil moisture monitoring systems. A soil moisture monitoring system will be installed on each enrolled field between February 1st, 2024 and July 1st, 2024. Some exceptions may be granted. Obviously, we realize there's going to be a lot of these, 320 this coming year. And, things go wrong, but we're going to try ideally to get them all out there. Ideally, all underground probes should be installed within a few weeks of planting. The physical installations will be completed by trained installation teams. Conservation districts and entities will be required to fill out a short questionnaire in 2024 addressing each field to determine constraints for soil moisture probe depths and system locations. Districts and entities will be a crucial bridge for facilitating introductions and interactions between producers and installation team members. Conservation districts and entities may also need to assist installation team members with field location and with choosing the best location for monitoring equipment and probes. So we really are looking to the conservation districts and entities to bridge the gap between the installation team and the landowners that you're working with. And then this is the enrollment agreement. So we're nearing the bottom here, nearing the end. This is just a little agreement between you, the conservation district and entity, or as we're calling you here, the subawardee and the producer. So this agreement made and entered into as of the date signed below by and between the undersigned producer and conservation district or entity / subawardee provides that the producer agrees to implement at least one new soil health practice on their enrolled agricultural field for a term of 3 crop years beginning October 1st, 2023. During the 4th crop year beginning October 1st, 2026, the producer will participate in the closeout of the grant program. If the producer withdraws from the Star Plus program prior to the end of the 4-year term, any funds dispersed for said program may be subject to full recovery. So, we don't, if we're providing people a very large amount of money and then they decide they just want to drop out because they don't like what's going on, then we could potentially ask for those funds back. It would have to be pretty egregious. We don't really want to do that. It would be beyond where we would want to take this. So let's all, with you guys on board, CDs and EEs, try to keep this from happening as much as possible. Obviously, there are going to be people who have personal issues, illness and who knows, but we're not going to go after those people for funds to come back. But it is worth saying, we want these people to feel like they're really committing to this. They need to have a little bit of skin in the game when they sign up. So the producer further agrees to comply with all requirements as stipulated by the grant guidelines. As I said, we will go over them on July 10th and any guideline amendments. And then there's just a little signature spot here for the producer and for the subawardee, which is the conservation district or entity, and there's a date. And then we'll wrap it up here with the privacy statement. This is worth pointing out to your producers as anytime they feel like all this might be a little much, you might say, we're agreeing to protect your personal information. All personally identifiable information, such as your names and addresses, will be safeguarded and maintained under controlled conditions. Some directly identifying data will be shared with the Natural Resources Conservation Service to allow for cultural resource and environmental clearances, but this information will be protected by federal PII policies. Data may be shared with researchers from Colorado State University, but you will not be identified in any publication resulting from this research. So they are aggregating data together and we'll be using it for research. That's an important part of the STAR Plus program, but we are also aware that some producers don't want their names out there. So if a producer does choose to participate in say one of the studies and they do agree to be quoted or have their name and information used in there, that's entirely their choice, but otherwise we're going to protect their personal information as if it was our own. So I'm getting to the end of the enrollment. I'm at the end of the enrollment portion here. And there's a few more slides, but we might take some questions maybe before we go in there. How's everyone feel about that? We have a lot, it looks like. All right, what happens if the enrolled practice is not working after the first or second year? The producer, what we would hope would be that they would attempt to adjust that practice and try a different way of implementing it. That would be our hope. I think
that's where the technical assistance provider and, really asking around to get more clarification on what you're doing and what maybe you should be doing that might be a little bit different. But, getting out on that field with an expert to help troubleshoot that, I think would be the best course of action on that. Just continuing to do it the same way over and over and not adjusting it might not be the best way to proceed on that.
Yep. Yeah. Well, hopefully, they're able to get technical assistance to adjust their practice and still attempt to implement it. I mean, I would think, 1 year of failure, and then maybe they could try it a little bit differently the second year, and maybe they wouldn't have that failure. And then we have, does this rule regarding herbicides and pesticides apply to producers that were enrolled last year or only to new producers starting in 2023? That is dependent upon which conservation district you are in. And I would be glad to call you, Casey Green, and talk to you about that one-on-one if that would be helpful. And it looks like Nikki or Cindy even replied to you there. All right, is in-kind matching allowed? What if the new practice reduces productivity at first? Can these losses be claimed as a match? And looks like Nikki said, some in-kind is allowed, documentation is key. Please email us at cda_soil@state.co.us and we will be happy to discuss and clarify any ideas you may have. And then she said, loss is challenging. Please contact us directly to work this through. So yeah, some of these are very specific questions, that are going to be specific to your producers, and we are always available for a phone call or email. There are instances where if the producer needs to purchase hay due to grazing being impacted, that is a direct cost that can be used as match. So that's actually a very good point to remember for both last year's producers and this year's producers. The cost of hay is considered a matching cost. Can the producer use their time toward applying the herbicides and pesticides toward their match? Time can always be used per CSU labor rates. Yes, be sure producers include their time. So you're definitely good there. We just don't want the receipts for the herbicides and pesticides. I will get a hold of you, Casey, about this other one. Looks like we're still talking about the pesticides. All right. Fields in crop rotation may require different soil health practices each year. Is it okay to not use the same practice each of the 3 years? I would say yes, but we would like you up front to know what all three practices will be. We're going to need to know those things when they enroll. So they're going to have to look out a ways if they're planning to change the practice each year, if that makes sense, Bill.
That makes sense. Thanks.
You bet. Okay, I'm going to go back and finish up the slideshow here. Unless does anyone have any other questions? Want to jump in on voice? All righty. All right, so here's our producer enrollment timeline. So this summer, conservation districts and entities will receive their contract from the CDA. And as I said, that contract will have the enrollment package in there. It will also have the grant guidelines with it, which we'll be going over on July 10th. In July, you can announce Star Plus, begin recruiting producers and advertise as needed. In August, begin enrolling your producers, helping them fill out the eligibility forms at their FSA office. In August and September, their consultations and eligibility confirmation you'll be working on their consultations and eligibility confirmations. So you'll be going out and meeting with them and filling out that enrollment package. And then our deadline to have all of the consultations and enrollments complete is September 15th. And then here are some coming up key dates for 2023 and 2024. This is just a small amount of the key dates, but these are probably very important ones. June 20th, obviously, is today our enrollment package. Not on there is July 10th, which is our consultation, or I'm sorry, our grant guidelines. We're going to go through the grant guidelines. Summer 2023, there will be contracts coming out. September 15th, 2023 is the due date for our consultations and enrollments. So we want all those producers done with the FSA and you to have went through that package with them. January through March, we'll have match payments being sent to producers if the match form has been approved by CDA. So that means when we get the match form, it all looks okay. And then spring of 2024, we will be doing soil testing, soil moisture probe installation, and do their field evaluations. So that's when they'll actually be doing their star field scorings. They'll fill out those evaluations, and you folks will be pointing them in the right direction and helping them get through that. And we're to the end. Aha. If producers drop out in year 3, are they technically at risk for paying back their incentives from years 1 and 2, etc.? I would say it probably depends on why they drop out. Technically, they are at risk of us asking them to pay back their payments. As I said before, it would have to be pretty egregious as to why they were dropping out. And then maybe I ought to just very briefly talk about technical assistance. We are working with CSU. They're going to have a number of technical assistance providers. If the property is sold, can the new owner take over the contract? That's a great question. I would say yes, if the new owner fills out the FSA requirements for whatever year the sale takes place in. So we are having them all meet FSA requirements for years for fiscal year 2023, which is their enrollment year. I would say the producer, if they sold the property in like 2025, then the new person could go into the FSA, fill out their FSA stuff to be determined eligible in fiscal year 2025, and then we could issue payments to that person and they could continue on. Yes. I would say something like, let's say someone sold their property. I mean that we're not really going to come back and try to make them pay it back. It's the reason we have that in there is because we've had some folks that want to drop out for reasons that are just being kind of just being difficult, and that's why we have that in there. I mean, we don't want you guys to sign all these producers up, go through all this work. We're sending all this money, you're sending all this money, and then the producer just says, you know, I didn't like the fact that I have to fill out a yearly consultation. I mean, that's just, and I'm not saying that's going to happen a lot, but it may have, something like that may happen. I do see not so much a question as a statement, but we're a little concerned on the timeline. In our experience, it can be difficult to rally farmers and ranchers during this busiest time of their growing season, getting all complete by September 15th. Yes, it's going to be a kind of tight timeline at the beginning for everybody. And it's just sort of how we're bound at the moment to keep things rolling for our crop years. But I understand what you're saying, and I think our internal team could probably talk about it some and see if there's anything we could do. But I'm not sure that there is. And then real quick here, I think Steve Blecker is Steve Blecker's with CSU, and I believe he would talk to us a little bit about the CSU technical assistance providers and how that's going to look. Are you around, Steve?
Yeah, I'm right here. Yep.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, John. I appreciate the opportunity. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Steve Blecker. I'm with the Ag Experiment Station up here in Fort Collins, Colorado State University. And myself, over the next week or two or so, myself and Dan Goldhammer, who is with CSU Extension, we're going to be reaching out to all the conservation districts and eligible entities and just kind of start a conversation about what kind of technical assistance needs that you think you might have in this whole process. For instance, as far as helping decide what, helping producers decide which soil conservation practice to use, and then we'll also be around to help with of course, the soil moisture installations next spring and the soil sampling. So during this time, we're also identifying key personnel around the state, both in AES and in CSU Extension, that have different expertise regionally in different cropping systems. And we're going to try to kind of pair you guys up with these different folks. So you'll be able to have a technical assistance contact. And then I'll also, have my name and Dan's name. If anything ever comes up technical assistance wise, you can feel free to reach out to us. And these folks and ourselves will also be available over the life of the grant to answer any other kind of technical questions that come up, like say a given soil conservation practice didn't work, so maybe we should try something else. So we just want to know you guys have a kind of a backstop and some support in this process. And we're going to try to get out there, coordinate with you guys to do at least some of these initial enrollments and consultations. Is that anything else you want to add, John?
No, that's great, Steve.
Okay.
Thank you for adding that. Yeah, you guys will be hearing from Steve and Dan, and we really want, your thoughts. So we want to make the technical assistance portion of this it's key to all of this working out. So we really want to make it good. So we want, when those guys call you, let them know, what you envision and how you think it's going to work. And that way we can try to make it as good of a program as we can for everybody. But thank you, Steve. Much appreciated. And then I was wondering, maybe Cindy, would you want to talk about the any details on the proposed climate smart commodities branding / advertising for market enhancement for Star Plus producer crops?
Oh, yes, great question, Bill. We've had a lot of activity in this area. We just don't talk about it yet because nothing is solid, and so it takes a lot of work in the background with different supply chain partners to help them understand STAR and the type of work that it takes from producers, and helping those supply chain partners figure out how they fit into that, and how they can do direct purchases from producers, as well as there's other ways that they can do it more generally, where they provide producer payments directly, and they don't have to get that product directly, and keep it separate from other supply chains, if that makes sense. And so there's a lot going on in that arena. And in fact, through this new funding we got through USDA, we're about to hire, I say about to, we're preparing to hire a person that's going to work that market side with the different, with National Star, as well as different buyers. And then the other part of that is the Department of Ag's Markets Division was just granted a permanent position from the state legislature in the Long Bill to be a permanent person to work on different types of market opportunities in Colorado that would reward producers for the types of ecosystem services that they provide. And so there's a lot going on in there. We don't have it available today, and but just want to make sure you realize that there's so much going on in the background and in the works. And as we have things like different pilots or certain payment programs available to bring online, we'll be definitely doing some webinars on that. Does that help, Bill? Good deal.
All right. Thank you, Cindy. Thanks, Bill. That was a good question. All right, everybody. Does anyone have any other questions? Otherwise,
did you get the question from Susie about TAPs being approved through CSU?
I replied there and said, yes, they will. Oh, will TAPs? Oh, I guess maybe I misunderstood the question. Will TAPs be approved through CSU? And when you say approved, Susie, maybe you're meaning like if you hire your own TAP, as opposed to using a TAP provided by CSU?
Correct. Like we did last time, we hired a TAP that CSU worked with CSU, and she had to get paperwork through CSU to become approved.
Steve, you want to address that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, Susie, I'll give you a call probably later this week, and we can talk about that. You can let me know what you guys did last year. But yeah, we want to have us, kind of see what these folks, what their background is and experience and all that. I don't think it'll be
thank you.
though. Yeah.
Okay, we'll talk. Appreciate it.
You bet.
Awesome. Thanks, Steve. All right. Do we have any other questions coming up here? All right. Well, as always, I would just highly encourage you to reach out to us at CDA_soil@state.co.us if you have any specific questions that were not addressed today or that come up later on when you're thinking about this. There we go. CDA_soil. Nikki threw it in the chat. Just feel free to reach out with any questions, and if we don't